Alright, today we're going to revisit a model that we've used in previous tutorials. It's a sailboat here, and we're going to do several things with it, but in this first tutorial we're actually going to add some wind. We got a sail here which appears to be wind blown, however it's actually static. There is no animation there. So we're going to add a little bit of animation using some wind and gravity on this. So the first thing we need to do is go up to space warps, and in here you're going to find a couple of the things we're going to use here. Wind's going to be the first thing that we use, and we're going to come over to our left view here just simply because that's the back of the boat. So we'll draw our wind out, and it's important to understand that the size of this wind really doesn't matter. I mean the size of the icon itself, because later on we're going to adjust the properties of this wind. So we need to make sure it's pointed the right direction. Right now it's actually going from the back of the boat going towards the front of the boat. We want it to go from the front to the back. So we're going to move this around, and we're going to have it going kind of at an angle because sailboats don't sail directly into the wind. So we'll adjust that, and once we get something that we like, that looks like it might work good. Now we're going to come over here to gravity, and we're going to add a little bit of gravity to the sail so that it acts a little bit more realistic. And again, the size of this doesn't matter. We're going to put that right above the sail there. Alright, now we need to apply the wind and the gravity to the sail. And the way that we do that is right up here under Bind to Space Warp. We click on that, and then we click and drag from our wind to our sail. And you can see it showed the grid there for a second, showing that it's actually applied. And we're going to do the same thing with our gravity here. So we'll go Bind to Space Warp. We'll click and drag from our space warp to our sail. Make sure that that is turned off. Our selection object is turned on. And we want to do a couple of things with this sail. So we're going to go back to our Modify panel. And if you see here, I've got the sail selected, and you see the gravity binding and the wind binding, so both of those things took. In the cloth, I have actually set up this model so that this cloth is attached to this forestay right here, so that we need to go up to Object Properties, and we need to make sure that the jib, which is what we're working with here, this front sail, is set to a preset. So we're going to choose silk, even though we're not traditionally we wouldn't have a silk sail. Just for the sake of the animation, we're going to select that and select OK. Now the last thing we have to get set up, actually the second to last thing we have to get set up, we need to click on this Cloth Forces, and in this Cloth Forces we need to take gravity and move it over, and we need to take this wind and we need to move it over to Forces in Simulation so that it uses both of those.
I'm going to scale these down just a little bit.
And now that last thing we need to set up are the wind and gravity properties. So we're just gonna bump this up, and we'll come back and modify this later based on what we feel we need. But I like to bump it up kind of high to start with. Alright. And we're going to leave our gravity, actually let's bump our gravity up to a 2. Alright, now we're going to come back down to our cloth, and we're going to make sure that right here it says simulated 1. We don't have any simulations in here at this point, so we're going to click on this button right here. And you can see our sail is moving, although we need to adjust it a little bit. So we're going to erase the simulation, and we're going to come up here and modify these wind binding, or excuse me, the wind properties. Alright, I ended up messing around with these settings, and I ended up going a lot higher than I originally did. You can set yours to about 4,700, and I set turbulence ends up working out about 150. If you go too high on these numbers, you'll end up actually pulling these vertices apart, and it'll do some weird things. So these numbers you can set to even numbers. The decimals here don't matter.
Now we can add some more detail.
So once you end up
to
getting all that set up, click back on your sail,
put some bracing
click
in
back
here,
on simulate,
but that's
let that
essentially
run
how
through
we
the
can
100
use
frames
loft
that we
to
have here.
create shapes that would be hard to
And
create
after
with
that's
videos.
finished, if you hit play, you can see what the simulation looks like, and it'll actually loop until you stop it again.